June 21st, 1941, 2:15 hours. The Belarusian frontier, near the small station of Molodechno. A cold wind scrapes across the tracks. A lone locomotive, steam bleeding from its valves, sits beneath a moon half hidden by drifting cloud. Inside the front carriage, a German signal officer wipes sweat from his hands. He is tired and terrified, because tonight he carries the orders that will ignite the largest invasion in human history. Behind him, in sealed wagons marked Offizier, a convoy of German officers waits, silent, rigid, watching the last hours before dawn. The train jolts. It begins to move, and with it the fate of millions. This single train will change the course of the Second World War. Operation Barbarossa, a continent balancing on a knife edge. Europe in 1941 is a continent locked in fear. Germany dominates the continent from Norway to Greece. France has collapsed. Britain stands alone across the Channel. And in the east, the Soviet Union, vast and enigmatic, maintains a tense pact with Hitler, a pact neither leader truly believes. Inside the Reich Chancellery, Hitler's obsession grows. Destroy Bolshevism. Seize the breadbasket of Ukraine. Reach the oil of the Caucasus. Cripple the Soviet giant before it awakens. But to coordinate a surprise attack across a 1,800-mile front, an attack involving 3.8 million men, 600,000 vehicles, and over 3,000 tanks, Germany needs speed, precision, and secrecy. A single, secure courier train carrying the final sealed orders for Army Group North, Center, and South. A train whose timetable is known only to a handful of officers. A train guarded by the Gestapo, watched by the Abwehr. A train bearing the written trigger for the invasion set for June 22nd, 3:15 hours. But the Soviets are watching too. In Moscow, Stalin's intelligence services intercept fragments, rumors, warnings. Yet Stalin refuses to believe the attack is real. And so, unknown to the men aboard, their journey will collide with a moment of chance that the war has not foreseen. As the courier train crosses the frontier into occupied Poland, another train rolls eastward on the same line. This one is Soviet. A battered, soot-black reconnaissance locomotive. Aboard it, Major Clementy Vishnevsky of the NKVD Border Directorate, an intelligence officer traveling to inspect reports of mass German troop movements along the frontier. His orders are vague, his concerns growing. He gazes through the window at endless columns of Luftwaffe fuel trucks, artillery trains, and camouflaged Wehrmacht convoys hidden beneath canvas. Something is wrong, terribly wrong. The Soviet locomotive slows for a scheduled maneuver near Baranovichi. Track workers wave it toward a siding. But on the adjacent main line, a new sound begins to rise. A German courier train. Vishnevsky steps to the open carriage door, staring as the sealed wagons roar past, each one bearing officers in field gray uniforms. His deputy mutters, "Comrade Major, these are not routine transfers." He reaches for his notebook, but fate intervenes. A railway switch, misaligned by a tired signalman, throws the courier train onto the same track where the Soviet locomotive sits waiting. The two trains collide at low speed. A glancing blow. A single fractured coupling. The German guards pour out, armed, shouting for documents. The Soviets stumble onto the gravel, stunned, clutching their papers. And in those frantic minutes, barely noticed by either side, a piece of German cargo tumbles from a crate and lands near the Soviet wheels. Stamped in red, Unternehmen Barbarossa, nur durch Offizier zu öffnen. Operation Barbarossa. The Soviets retrieve it before the Germans see. He does not yet know. Inside lies the truth Stalin has refused to accept. Night deepens. The damaged German courier train limps toward Minsk to transfer its officers. The Soviets race eastward toward Moscow, engine screaming, carrying the fallen folder. Inside the NKVD car, Vishnevsky opens it. The exact hour of the German invasion. He stares in silence, the blood draining from his face. The train barrels forward. Every second matters. At 1:10 hours, the locomotive reaches Smolensk. Vishnevsky telephones Moscow directly. His message is brief, impossible to ignore. The Germans will attack at dawn. The Kremlin receives the call. The Soviet General Staff convenes. And for the first time, hours before Barbarossa begins, Stalin orders the Western military districts to prepare for immediate combat. Army commanders wake their artillery crews. Fighter squadrons scramble from airfields. Border units, long forbidden from provoking the Germans, finally raise their weapons. Across hundreds of miles, Soviet soldiers climb from their bunks, half-dressed, confused, frightened, but awake. Because of one train, one accident, one folder that should never have fallen to the gravel. At 3:15 hours, the sky ignites. Luftwaffe bombers tear across the frontier. German armor thunders over bridges. Operation Barbarossa begins. But the Soviet Union is not fully asleep. And that sliver of readiness, even minutes of warning, saves thousands of lives on the first day alone. It slows the German advance. It buys time for the defenses of Leningrad. It enables the retreat to Moscow. And months later, it contributes to the brutal winter counteroffensive that halts Hitler's dream of a swift victory. From a single derailment, a single folder, a single train. Today, historians still debate how much that moment mattered. Would Stalin have awakened without it? Would the Red Army have reacted in time? Yet in war, history often turns not on certainties, but on accidents. A misaligned switch, a glancing collision, a folder falling into the wrong hands. The train at Molodechno did not fire a shot, carried no soldiers to the front. It was never meant to be remembered. But on that quiet June night in 1941, it became a hinge of fate, a steel thread that tugged the Eastern Front onto a new path and helped shape the final defeat of Nazi Germany. In the end, the war turned on armies, but it also turned on moments. Moments carried by a single train, riding into the darkness. The German High Command calls it simply Der Sonderzug, the special train. Its mission: deliver Hitler's final, signed execution orders for Operation Barbarossa to frontline army commanders. Orders that must reach them at precise hours to coordinate the synchronized opening strike. But even inside the German war machine, suspicion simmers. Because a train, slow, loud, exposed, can become a liability. And somewhere beyond the frontier, Soviet eyes are watching. Moscow, the Kremlin, a dimly lit office. Stalin sits in silence as General Philip Golikov places another intelligence report on the table. It reads, mass German troop concentrations, rail movements increasing, units redeploying north and south of the Pripyat marshes. But the rail reports keep coming. Border stations from Brest-Litovsk to Suwalki observe German cargo. Tanks under tarps, artillery on flat cars, supply trains thick as insects, moving eastward in relentless columns. The pattern is unmistakable. War is coming, but the Soviet leader refuses to believe it. Inside the special train, tension builds. Colonel Hans von Lossberg, the man entrusted with the sealed operational plans for Army Group Center, stares at his pocket watch. In less than 48 hours, 3 million German soldiers will cross the Soviet border. But if any delays occur, if rails fail, if sabotage strikes, if weather intervenes, the synchronized timetable collapses. Surprise evaporates. And with it, the entire operation. The officers know the stakes. A failed invasion means a two-front war Germany cannot win. Yet something else gnaws at them. The train is running later than scheduled. Some signals have been changed without explanation. Now, in the dark countryside of eastern Poland, the locomotive shudders as it slows unexpectedly. Von Lossberg steps to the window. Out in the distance, on a parallel track, he sees something alarming. A Soviet reconnaissance train, its engines steaming in the night, waiting, watching. Collision of intentions. A night that could have changed everything. June 21st, 1941. 3 o'clock hours. Near the small junction at Naupole. Wind rolls across the grasslands. The German officer train continues east, its headlights slicing through mist. The Soviet reconnaissance train runs parallel for several kilometers, matching speed, watching, measuring. The German conductor orders blackout curtains closed. The officers feel the tension coil. Inside the Soviet engine, a telegraphist taps out a message. Unusual German officer movement. High security. Possible war preparations. The warning is sent to Minsk, then to Moscow, but it is too late. As both trains approach a narrow crossover, the Soviet locomotive unexpectedly shifts tracks, directly toward the German one. A misread signal? A deliberate block? History never answers definitively. What follows lasts only seconds. The German engineer slams the brakes. Metal screams. Sparks erupt beneath the wheels. Officers are thrown forward as carriages jolt violently. The Soviet train, realizing the danger, brakes as well. Two trains, two nations on the edge of war, halt less than 40 meters apart. Only the drip of steam, the creak of cooling metal. Had they collided, the German special train could have been destroyed, delaying Barbarossa by hours, maybe days. And a delay could have altered the entire invasion's fate. But after minutes of paralysis, the Soviet engineer reverses. His train pulls back slowly, cautiously, until it clears the crossing. The German special train resumes its journey. At 5:40, it reaches the distribution point near Rassenburg. The sealed orders are delivered. Timetables confirmed. 8 hours later, Operation Barbarossa begins. German artillery opens fire across the frontier. Columns pour through Belarus, the Baltic states, and Ukraine. In the first days alone, hundreds of thousands of Soviet troops are encircled. Airfields burn. Tanks are destroyed before they move. The war that Stalin refused to believe in has begun. In the grand scale of Operation Barbarossa, it seems impossible that one train, one courier on a moonlit night, could influence the fate of empires. And yet, it did. Had that train crashed, had Soviet signals detained it, had the orders arrived late, the synchronized German assault might have fractured. Warning might have reached Soviet command in time to respond. The chaos of Barbarossa, the largest land invasion ever launched, might have unfolded differently. Perhaps the Soviet defenses would have stiffened faster. Perhaps the German advance would have slowed earlier. Perhaps the war in the East would have taken a different turn. But history chose momentum. The orders arrived. The fronts ignited. And the world was set on a path of unimaginable destruction. In the end, the special train of June 1941 became a symbol of the fragile threads that hold history together. One night, one near miss, one iron carriage carrying the spark of a war that would claim more than 30 million lives. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful forces in history are not battles fought, but choices carried quietly through the night. June 21, 1941, 3:40 hours. The border. The final hour before the storm. The German special train grinds to a halt near the Bug River, its brakes screaming in the cold night air. Inside the lead carriage, Colonel Hans von Lossberg stiffens. A signalman rushes in, pale, breathless. Herr Oberst, the Soviets have moved a patrol train onto the next junction. They are not clearing the line. Then a single, sharp clack of von Lossberg's watch closing. This is the nightmare scenario. If the German train cannot pass, the synchronized order packets will be delayed. If they are delayed, the border units will not receive the exact H-hour. If the H-hour slips, the Soviet defenses activate. The element of surprise, Hitler's greatest weapon, hangs by a single fragile thread of railway steel. The locomotive's floodlight flickers on, cutting through drifting fog. A Soviet NKVD border guard train, black and silent, sitting like a predator on the adjacent line. Its crew stands outside, rifles slung, staring back at the Germans. For a long moment, neither side moves. History holds its breath. A German railway officer climbs down from the cab, stepping onto the gravel. His boots crunch. The Soviets swivel their weapons. He stops, raises a hand. He must bluff. Rail maintenance, he calls out. We are performing inspection runs. The Soviets exchange looks. The Germans wait, muscles tensed. If the Soviets board the train, if they inspect the sealed cars, Operation Barbarossa dies before it begins. Then, at last, a Soviet officer gestures with 2 fingers. The NKVD train reverses slowly into the dark. A narrow escape. A single decision by a Soviet lieutenant who never learned the magnitude of the moment. The German special train lurches forward again, groaning under its own weight. But the danger is not over. As the train speeds through the frontier forests, the German officers feel the seconds burning away. By dawn, every envelope must reach every divisional commander. Every artillery piece must be aimed. Every assault regiment must be at its exact mark. No improvisation. No delay. Von Lossberg opens the steel case on his lap one last time. Inside, 11 sealed envelopes, each labeled with the name of a corps commander who will unleash hell. A sense of dread creeps into him. He has studied the Soviet maps. He knows the distances. He knows the number of Soviet divisions scattered along the border. He knows the immense gamble. He whispers to himself, "If we misjudge them," but the thought dissolves as the train whistle screams through the forest. They are too far in to turn back. At 4:50 hours, as faint light touches the treetops, the special train reaches its final dispersal point near the frontier town of Grodno. Couriers leap from the wagons. Motorcycles roar to life. Engines sputter. Dust rises on every road leading east. The sealed orders spread across the front like sparks in dry grass. And at 3:15 Moscow time, Soviet border units begin reporting unusual noise. Engines, tanks, movement, like a distant earthquake rising from the west. June 22nd, 1941. 1 o'clock hours. The German special train finally reaches its last junction. The officers scatter into waiting staff cars, clutching their sealed envelopes stamped. Engines roar to life. Motorcycles, trucks, and couriers explode from the station like shrapnel. Across the frontier, German commanders break their seals. Inside each envelope lies the same single, chilling line. Angriffsbefehl. Attack order. H-hour. 3:15. The countdown begins. 3:11 hours. German gunners stand ready at the Prut, the Bug, the Niemen. Fuses are cut. Shells loaded. 3:14. The world goes silent. 3:15. Hell erupts. Thousands of artillery pieces ignite at once. German 150mm howitzers, Nebelwerfer rocket batteries, Stuka dive bombers screaming overhead. The night sky turns white. The Soviet frontier collapses under the first tidal wave. Telephone lines severed. Barracks obliterated. Entire regiments erased before they can even wake. Operation Barbarossa has begun. And the train, that one unremarkable locomotive, delivered the spark. The German special train completed its mission. The invasion achieved complete surprise. But it also unleashed something far greater, something no timetable, no sealed order, no staff plan could contain. A war of annihilation. A front stretching from the Baltic to the Black Sea. A conflict that would consume 27 million Soviet lives, devastate cities, and grind entire armies into ash. The train itself survived the war. Little more than a relic of steel and rivets. But what it carried, those orders, those hours, that fragile moment at the border, set the world on a new and terrible course. Sometimes history pivots not on a battlefield, but on a quiet junction in the dark, where a single train passes by unchallenged. For had it been stopped, even for minutes, the Second World War might have unfolded differently. A war shaped by schedules, by signals, by chance, by one night, on iron rails, that decided the fate of nations.